Hey guys, this is Jay Calder of Jay Boxing here giving you a personal prediction for Canelo Alvarez versus John Ryder. And as always, this is just my take, of course. Your predictions can be left down in the comments section below. I'm pretty sure I know who most of you are going to pick. I mean, let's not kid ourselves here, but I'd love to hear the methods, your overall thoughts on the fight, of course, all that down in the comments section below. And a little bit of fight info here. This is, of course, Canelo Alvarez taking on John Ryder. This will be at the AKRON Stadium in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico. This will be airing live on DAZN in the super middleweight division with the Ring Magazine as well as the IBF, WBA, WBC, WBO titles on the line, currently possessed by Alvarez. Now, is this the biggest fight in the world? Of course not. It has some meaning for Canelo himself personally. He's fighting at home for the first time in several years, should be a very massive crowd. And when you see these kind of stadium crowds, when you're seeing 30, 40, 50, 60,000 people, it doesn't really dawn on you how many people that is until you see the fight. It's when it's an Anthony Joshua, when it's a Tyson Fury, when it's been Canelo in the past, Errol Spence in the past, for example. It looks much more massive than you remember it to be. So in that sense, it's an interesting sort of presentation of boxing. But Ryder is definitely expected to lose. Let's not kid ourselves. This is a stay busy fight for Canelo, a tune-up after surgery. That's what it is. From here, he expects to move on and either defend his gold later this year or challenge Dmitry Bivol at 175 pounds, whatever the case may be. Question is, will Ryder spoil those plans? Let's break this one down. Starting with Canelo. For Canelo to win, I think you want to use the left hook to the body. In general, that left hook is going to do pretty well for you, I think, for a few reasons. With Ryder, you have a southpaw. Naturally, you're going to be able to land that left hook pretty well because it just lines up in terms of how your bodies are going to be positioned. Also, you're going to have a possible chance of lining up the right hand using that left hook to kind of square him up a little bit more so that he's where you want him to be as it pertains to you. And you'll be able to use that left hook upstairs when you start going to the body with it a bit more because it's going to force his arm to move down to try and block, opening that shot up for you upstairs. And this will kind of work synergistically for you. You know, when he's guarding that body, take it upstairs. When he's expecting it to be maybe more of a head blow, you're of course going to dig it right back to the body. But specifically, I think you want to dig to the body in this fight in general because you have to find a way to try and convince Ryder not to put forth the effort he's looking to put forth. He's a very aggressive fighter, come forward fighter. You could start taking the wind out of his sails sooner the better, and I think a way of doing that is by landing that left hook to the body, especially if you're Canelo, who you happen to have a good one. I would also say work that head move. You know, Canelo has some very underrated head movement to some. He's, obviously been recognized by others to have some pretty solid head movement. It specifically works at that waist area for him when he can come kind of in and out, up and down from the waist without having to exert too much energy and still, of course, keep himself defensively responsible. That's particularly important in every fight, of course, but in this one as well because you want to kind of convince Ryder he's not able to land, he's not able to hurt you. The things he wants to do in this fight, the only chance he has in this fight isn't going to work because he's not going to land that big bomb that changes the course of the fight in this way. Work that head movement, befuddle him a little bit, make him unsure of himself when he's throwing those blows, and this will allow for you to set up the work you're looking to set up and land those counter shots as well as your own power shots when he's not nearly as committed to his work as he'd like to be. And finally, I would say switch up your shot selection. You don't want to be predictable. You don't want to give Ryder any reason to believe he has a real shot in this fight. That's the last thing you want to do against a heavy underdog, someone who has the sort of belief that Ryder seems to have in himself. What's more, you want to show that you still have what it takes to dominate these sort of opponents. This is what you should be doing. With all due respect to John Ryder, based on your previous accomplishments, your ranking, what you've done in the ring, the division, you, as Canelo, should be doing well in this fight. If you're just making it too simplistic, too easy to read, to predict, and he's able to get off his own shots, avoid some of yours, it's just not a good look for you if you're the unified champion at 168 pounds the way Canelo is. Switch up those shots. It'll help befuddle him anyway, especially if you're incorporating it with that head move. And then, of course, digging to the body as mentioned. And I think overall, that's a pretty good plan for success if you're Canelo Alvarez. Switching over to Ryder. For Ryder to win, I think you want to stay off the ropes. In general, if you're Ryder, you're going to want to be coming forward. I think that's pretty safe to say. You're not looking to, try and box and move off the back foot and hope that Canelo doesn't catch up to you. He's going to catch up to you if you're doing that. Instead, you're going to, at the very least, need to meet fire with fire some of the time, if not most of the time. I don't think it's going to benefit you if you're trying to do that off the ropes. Instead, you're going to need to circle when you're in those positions and Canelo's trying to pressure, and you're going to need to try and meet him face to face and put your forehead into his chest sometimes, or push him back or pressure him back, get him on the ropes at times. If by the 6th, 7th, 8th round you're actually backing him up, you're probably in a good position there if you're Ryder. But regardless of exactly the way this fight is fought in the middle of the ring, it needs to be more in the middle than on the ropes if you're Ryder. I would also say land the right hook. You have a pretty solid right hook, and it's certainly a shot, again, that can land based on positioning, with you being a southpaw and Canelo being an orthodox fighter. It works for a few reasons. Number one, it's kind of a lead hand for you, so you can use a jab and then potentially kind of disguise it a bit more as a right hook, and it's a shot that perhaps Canelo lunges in with when he's trying to land his own left hook, especially if he does dig to the body, which I think he will do. This will, of course, depend on your timing and how well you're able to set it up in the read that you get on Canelo. But if you can read it pretty well and then work it into your own potential shots as he's trying to land that left hook, or land something as he's stepping in, you have a good chance of clipping him with it and maybe not hurting him, but at the very least doing some damage and picking up some points in the process. And finally, I would say win the front foot war. You know, you have an orthodox versus a southpaw fighter, with Ryder being a southpaw. I think it's going to be important to make sure your foot positioning is in the best possible spot in this fight, especially against a fighter who, like Canelo, is pretty technically sound. You don't want to be too much on the inside where you're just effectively giving up your southpawness, if you will. You want to be utilizing the fact that you're a left-handed fighter to your advantage. You want to make sure that you're positioning yourself to land your shots, and he is in a tougher spot trying to work across his body to do the same. If you can win that front foot war, at the very least, it's half the battle to kind of getting into the fight you need to get into stylistically to have some success. Then it will just be about trying to overall work in this kind of the confines of how this fight's going to work by landing the shots you need to land and staying off the ropes. Now, in terms of my pick here, Ryder will be spirited, I think, in this effort, but Canelo should get the job done handily. Canelo will take some time to get going, I think, testing out the hand from the injury and the surgery, but overall, as Ryder will press, it'll force Canelo to get through the gears a bit faster and ultimately get to work a bit faster as well. We enter the middle frames, the left hand, especially to the body for Canelo, will score well and wear Ryder down. Before we enter the final third, it'll be all Canelo at that point as he's putting his shots together, his combinations, and ends matters there, possibly with that body shot starting off the action. Winner, Canelo Alvarez via mid-fight stoppage. And in terms of the betting odds here, Canelo, of course, is a massive favorite. You have him at a minus 1,600. Stay away from that line. Absolutely no reason to take it, with Ryder coming in at a plus 830. Again, as I always say in these sorts of situations, if you're that sort of underdog chaser, Ryder is a perfect bet for you. You're getting, 8.5 to 1 odds, basically. Nothing wrong with that kind of pick if you're just looking to take that kind of long shot. Of course, prepare to lose that money because it's very likely. That would be the only value you have in something like that, a very small bet there. In terms of the over-under, I think that's where you get a lot more value. It's set at 8.5 rounds, with the over being at a minus 125 and the under being a minus 105. Personally, I do think this fight ends in those middle rounds, so the line is set pretty well, but I do think it's actually good to pick the under in this one. I do think it ends a little earlier than those championship rounds, which that 8.5 is. So, if it were me and I was making that bet, a small to medium-sized bet makes sense there to me. Good value. You're basically getting even money there. So, certainly a line that I would look at myself in this particular fight. But in any event, my prediction record heading into this contest is 14-6 with 10 exact. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts, predictions, bets, so on and so forth. Please be sure to like, comment, share, subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at jcalderon_JOB. You can email me at junboxing@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you there. Also, be sure to check out junboxing.com for schedule, results, betting odds, grades, rankings, all that good stuff. And as always, until next time.